Hello!
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and this is everything you need to know before watching 28 years later. So in 2002, right out the gate, we learn about the rage virus. This virus was man-made in a lab. Initially, Cambridge scientists accidentally created it in an attempt to create a cure for anger and aggressive behavior, hoping for it to be used in subduing violent protest and controlling civil unrest. They were testing a variant of this supposed cure on chimps mixed with aspects of the Ebola virus so that it could spread quickly throughout the crowds. Now, despite the doctor's best attempts, the cure ended up having the opposite effect, creating a viral infection that sent the monkeys into a rabid-like rage. Eventually, a bunch of PETA activists catch wind of it and they break into this facility. And as soon as one of them manages to open the cage, the monkeys attack and they violently spread the infection from themselves to humans. This officially kicks off the outbreak amongst humans, which induces mind-consuming rabies-like aggression and bouts of bloody puke. Like the Ebola virus, it is specifically spread through physical contact, most commonly through infected blood, but it can also pass through saliva, as we'll see later.
Oh, that's really gross, even for zombies.
Well, technically, buddy, they're not zombies, at least in the traditional sense. The infected aren't undead. They're very much mortal, meaning that they can be drowned, choked, or even go down from a shot to the chest. You don't have to take out the brain. And you know, these movies get pretty intense, and when I think about the possibility of something like this actually happening, it makes me a little anxious. And man, when I get anxious, I am horrible about biting my lips. And that's a bad habit that I didn't think I'd ever be able to quit. And I was right. So instead, I replaced my bad oral fixation habit with Fume. They are the sponsor of this video. And look, I'm sure you guys have your own bad habits that you'd like to quit, especially in social situations when you feel anxious or just bored. For me, Fume has been a game changer. Fume doesn't use smoke or vapor, it's just natural flavored air that gives you something to reach for without the chemicals. Studies have shown that quitting a habit cold turkey is actually really bad for you, so I liked having something that I could reach for when I feel the urge, and it's an alternative to other harmful habits. This is an award-winning flavored air device that doesn't use combustion, and it's not even electronic. You can use it anywhere. There's no smoke, no vapor, no chemicals, just natural flavored air. You see, they just have these plant-based cores that taste great, and they just introduced mango, my new favorite flavor. It's honestly bolder than past flavors that I've tried, and I recommend it if you want to switch things up. And remember, these are non-toxic flavors, and they are a guilt-free alternative with natural ingredients. And I have to say, I love the magnetic, fidget-friendly design that makes this incredibly satisfying sound. Guys, more than 500,000 people have already added Fume to their daily routine, and I totally get why. It is simple, satisfying, and it doesn't come with any downsides of your old bad habits. And right now, if you order the Journey Pack using my code ScreenCrush, you will get a free Fume topper. It's this great rubber piece on the end so you can chew the end, and it's great for oral fixation anxiety. So if you've been thinking about changing your habits, this is the perfect step. Go to tryfume.com/ScreenCrush or scan the QR code on screen to grab yours today. Now, back to the recap. Now, as the title suggests, the real plot of the movie kicks off 28 days after the initial outbreak.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
Here we meet our boy Jim, played by none other than young Oppenheimer himself, Cillian Murphy. Jim wakes up butt naked in an empty hospital that's been completely abandoned after the outbreak. He discovers that not only is he alone in the hospital, but nearly all of London as well. He eventually stumbles into a church where he encounters his first infected, triggering a chase that leads him to a gas station. There, he is rescued by his new friends Mark and Selena.
I'm Mark. This is Selena.
As they wait out the rest of the infected in an abandoned convenience store, Jim fills us in on how he ended up in the hospital in the first place. Turns out he was a pizza courier who was hit by a car, which put him in a coma when the outbreak began.
That's convenient.
After dropping his backstory, his new crew essentially explains the ground rules of this new post-apocalyptic London, saying,
You never go anywhere alone unless you've got no choice.
Jim is still in shock, so he convinces the crew to let him go to his old home to see if his parents are still alive. Turns out, they're not. But the trip does end up with Mark getting bit, and Selena immediately executes him, following it up with,
And just so you know where you stand, if it happens to you, I'll do it in a heartbeat.
As they continue exploring the next day, they find an apartment with Christmas lights blinking on the outside of a high-rise apartment, which they take as an invitation. However, on their way up to the apartment, they trigger a fresh wave of infected. Luckily, their new friend is waiting at the top of the stairs with riot gear, and the three of them safely escape into his flat. This is where we meet Frank, Frank and Hannah, who let them into their home and provide them with a brief sense of normalcy. Eventually, Frank reveals his real plan to get to a sanctuary he's been hearing about via radio broadcast.
The answer to infection is here. If you hear this, you're not alone.
Eventually, they all commit to the idea and Frank's car is full of supplies. They bond as a found family along the road trip when they aren't running away from a tunnel full of infected. When they do finally arrive at the base, it's seemingly empty, which really breaks Frank's heart, sending him into a rage.
We have to go.
Yeah.
Go f***ing where?
In his frustration, he accidentally shakes the corpses of an infected and gets a splash of blood in his eye, thus infecting him. As infected Frank charges toward his daughter, camouflage militia pop out of the bushes and immediately execute him. Turns out the base is real, but the inhabitants were keeping camouflage while they got a feel for these newcomers. They take Jim, Selena, and the daughter back to their main base. The soldiers are living large, hoarding enough supplies that they even toss out food if it doesn't meet their standards, which is an incredible luxury in this scarce apocalypse. They are armed to the gills and even have a chained up infected in their courtyard that they keep alive just to see how long it takes to starve one out. We see them flex their military might when their dinner is interrupted by a wave of infected attacking the base. The base is more than secure with heavy artillery, chain link fences, and even landmines, which absolutely shred through the unarmed infected. After coming back from the battle, one of the soldiers starts trying to get frisky with Selena, and Jim is not having it.
Easy, tiger.
This is when the commander, Henry, confides in Jim that the whole operation is a hoax and that the broadcast was never meant to lure in anyone other than women for him and his soldiers to sleep with and to provide the world with a new future.
Okay, what the
As soon as Jim realizes what's going on, he tries to stop them alongside one of the soldiers, causing them to get locked up together.
Wow, just 28 days in, they start doing all that stuff, huh?
Well, you're right to question it. Our defective homeboy does so too. And while they're locked up together, he drops this conspiracy theory on Jim, saying,
And right now, TVs are playing and planes are flying in the sky, and the rest of the world is continuing as normal.
And it doesn't take too long for it to become more than just a conspiracy. When the rest of the soldiers come to take care of the two for good, Jim's able to make a break for it and escape over the wall, where he actually sees a plane in the sky, validating the defected soldiers' conspiracy. This means that the virus isn't worldwide, but simply quarantined within the UK, and the rest of the world simply abandoned them to die.
What a twist.
Now, as dark as this is, it actually gives Jim hope of escaping this nightmare. He goes back to save the girls, setting their captured infected free within their own base. When Jim finally reunites with Selena, she almost mistakes him for being infected before embracing him, to which he replies with,
That was longer than a heartbeat.
They are then interrupted by Commander Henry, who shows up back at the base to finish the job. But Selena, Jim, and Hannah manage to escape, crashing through the locked gate and keeping them in. The final shot brings us another 28 days into the future, 2 months after the initial outbreak. The Manchester 3 managed to get the attention of a jet passing over them right before we hit the credits.
Wait, we don't even know whether or not to get rescued?
Nope. Now, keep in mind that this is only what happens within the first 2 months of the outbreak. The sequel picks up 6 months after the outbreak. Now, while 28 days showed us how quickly systems fail and abandon those that they are sworn to protect, 28 weeks later takes the message one step further and massively increases the magnitude of these failures and their consequences. Just like the first movie, this one starts with its own preluding story where we meet Donald Harris and his wife Alice, who have shacked up with an elderly couple alongside a few others in a cottage to wait out the rest of the outbreak. Their peace and quiet is interrupted when a kid comes to the door seeking refuge, sending a herd of infected to swarm the barely fortified home. Alice tries to save the kid from the chaos, and Donald ditches her to save his own skin. We see his complete lack of empathy reiterated again as he escapes the house and looks back at the house to see his wife begging him to save her before being pulled away by the infected. After our introduction to Frank, we are given a quick slideshow explanation with the details of what has happened in the months in between these two films. Turns out, only a week after the first movie, the infected die of starvation, which answers the question that Commander Henry was trying to figure out. After 11 weeks, or roughly 3 months into the outbreak, American-led NATO forces enter London to clear out the rest of the outbreak. And after declaring it free of infection, they start to rebuild. The main story kicks off 2 weeks into the reconstruction of the Isle of Dogs. Here, we meet Donald's children, Tammy Tammy and Andy Harris. They were on a school trip to Spain when the outbreak hit, so they've been safe outside of the quarantine. Andy, in particular, is recognized as officially the youngest person in the UK, which implies that the virus was particularly more lethal to young kids. He also has heterochromatic eyes, 2 different eye colors. That is an extremely rare genetic condition that affects only about 6 in every 10,000 people in the US. After the doctor notices, she says,
Usually hereditary. Do one of your parents have the same? My mother.
Which isn't the only thing they share, as we see later. We then get a peek of District 1, which is a highly fortified quarantine zone where the kids are reunited with their fathers and they try to reestablish something resembling a normal life. He lies about how their mother died, saying that,
I tried to go back. She was already gone.
Behind the scenes, the US military is pretty cocky about its handling of the virus and dismisses the concerns of reinfection just before the situation severely humbles them when the kids sneak out of the quarantine zone to revisit their old home. They steal a pizza delivery guy's moped to get there, which feels like a callback to Jim's old life as a courier. However, the big plot twist is waiting for them at home, where they find their mom is alive.
Hey, wasn't she eaten alive?
Nope, she has plot armor, buddy. Turns out some people are born with a genetic disposition to the virus, giving them immunity, kind of like Ellie from The Last of Us, except it doesn't completely nullify the effects. Instead, she becomes a carrier for the virus, showing no symptoms, but still able to pass it to uninfected.
But the virus is still in her blood and saliva, so technically she's not immune.
After cleaning her up, the military's lead medical officer, Scarlett Levy, figures this out pretty quickly. While the military discusses the potential for a cure, those hopes are quickly dashed away. When Don tries to kiss and make up with his wife, he starts a fresh new outbreak within the new quarantine zone, which makes everything worse by corralling everyone together. This set the entire QZ into a state of panic, initiating the military's Code Red protocols. At first, this meant getting the remaining uninfected citizens to safety while they take out the rest of the infected. But the crowd quickly becomes too much for the military to handle, and they agree to make the call to go open season on every civilian to minimize the spread as much as possible. Sergeant Doyle, played by Clint Barton himself, Jeremy Renner, can't stomach this, especially when little Andy runs across his crosshairs, and he decides to go on his own mission to evacuate Andy, his sisters, and a few other civilians. After getting a radio call from the head military doctor about the importance of the father's kid with heterochromia, our boys step in to try to help save him and his friends. As they're evaluating, Doyle's buddy Flynn informs him over the radio that he's got 4 minutes before they firebomb the whole district, and after dodging some snipers, they manage to reach a rooftop that keeps them safe. However, the firebombs don't wipe out all of the infected as the military had hoped, and in some cases, it only pissed them off further. But they are able to get out of the city nonetheless. Doyle brings the crew to meet Flynn at the evac point, but fails to disclose the civilians he is trying to save alongside him. As they argue, one of the citizens decides to hop on after seeing a crowd of infected charging toward the drop site, causing Flynn to try and shake him off. In doing so, it gives us the best scene of the series. The remaining infected manage to chase Doyle, Levy, and the Harris kids back into the city, forcing them to take shelter in a car. They get pinned by the infected and then again by the government, which leads Doyle to sacrifice himself to get the rest of them to Flynn at the new drop site. They end up taking the car into an underground subway tunnel, which is completely pitch black, forcing Levy to be the eyes for the group using only her night vision scope. Everything is going fine until they trip and Levy loses sight of both of them in the darkness. When she finds Tammy, she is jump scared by an infected who ends up brutally beating her with her own gun. Tammy gets away, but Andy runs into his infected father and gets bitten, just before Tammy comes in with the gun and saves what is left of them. Andy runs off to keep his sister safe, but turns out he is immune just like his mother. Just like their heterochromatic eyes, he shares the same immunity. They both arrive at the stadium to rendezvous with Flynn for the evac, and though he hesitates at first, he decides to rescue the kids to honor his friend's last request.
And they all lived happily ever after, right?
Well, you see, Andy, he does make it out alive, but he is a carrier, so by taking him off the island, it allows the infection to now spread across the mainland of Europe, which is what we see in the final shots of the movie. 28 days later, Andy was evacuated with a shot of the infected running toward the Eiffel Tower. And this is what sets up 28 years later after the virus became global, and the effect that it has had ever since. That said, this series is known for its twist, and I'm sure the film will be no exception. While the first two films dealt with violence, abandonment, and even criticized the strength of the systems that protect us, 28 years later we'll be dealing with an established society well past the brink of collapse, and with a spin-off movie just a year behind it, it seems like its creators have a lot of faith in where these stories are going. But hey, that's everything you need to know before checking out 28 years later. Let me know, are you excited for this franchise's return? Any important details we missed? Let me know down in the comments below. Or hey, you can yell at Dodd Seitz, he's the one who wrote the video. You can find his socials below. And hey, if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe and smash that button for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.